Mr. Gordon Graham, it's a pleasure to talk to you again, my friend.
That's for sure.
It's been a long time, and here we are.
I think that I went back in your podcast. I think I was your first or second guest in your podcast when you started, you know?
You know what? You were the first guest, and I was my own first guest, episode
Okay.
one,
Okay.
and then you were episodes 2 and 3, if I recall.
Wow.
We had
How
so much to
historic.
talk about. We had to break it up into 2 episodes. So
Yeah.
let's see where we go with this one. Here we are, episode 300 and something, and we're still talking. I
Really
love it.
fantastic, Ed. Well, I think our topic for today is AI, and that it's a huge topic.
It
It's
is
a
a huge topic. I suspect you and I are going to be talking about this a few times over the next year or two, if you're open to it. But this thing is evolving so quickly, right?
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
first talk about where we are right now, because I want to timestamp this thing because it's evolving so quickly. We're recording right now in June 2023, and I'm curious, as copywriters, as writers, where do things stand right now in this rapidly developing journey?
Well, I think that we're in was it you that said the messy middle? You know, I
Yes.
I think I think we're in the very early days of seeing what AI could do, but in terms of churn and confusion and fear and loathing, we're deep into it. And I kind of segment writers into three groups. There's the enthusiast who's already jumped in and is already using AI for almost every project. There's the resistor who says, I hate this stuff. I don't care about it. It's going to destroy the profession and I'm never going to use it. And then there's the people that are somewhere in the middle, the pragmatists who use it sometimes, who are trying it out, testing it out. People may think I'm an enthusiast because I'm writing about it in my newsletter all the time, but I am a pragmatist, and I think that's a reasonable place for writers to be. We don't want to be on the bleeding edge, and we don't want to be the late adopters that get steamrolled by missing out on something. Being in the middle mainstream is a good place for writers to be, because we're not computer scientists and we don't have IT departments, to back us up. Most of us are sole practitioners, and we have to see the benefit of using this stuff like immediately. And so I'm not spending all day long trying out new products, new AI services, signing up for everything. But I have to tell you, Ed, I listen to 5 podcasts about AI every week, and every single one of them starts every single episode, and they have since January, saying this: wow, I can't believe how much happened in the AI world. How are we going to cover it all? There's so much to cover. There's so many announcements. There's so many new products. There are billions of dollars pouring into this. Their big tech companies are in a life and death struggle with one another. Everybody is trying to one up everybody else. There's a zillion startups that are using the large language models to do some particular twist on them, and it is impossible to keep up and impossible to understand everything that's going on. So I just try to kind of keep it to an overview, and I think stay pragmatic about it.
I think that's very sensible, and this is why I want this discussion to remain about fundamentals and practical ideas and suggestions, because we can't possibly be on the bleeding edge and talk about the latest, greatest, because by the time this publishes, that's going to be old news. In fact, I think I saw last month in May 2023 alone, there were over 2,500 new apps based on AI
Yeah.
based apps that just launched in 1 month. And I think it was like 1,500 plus the month before. So it's insane. Let's talk a little bit about the white paper you wrote using ChatGPT, because I found that fascinating and I think it was a brilliant idea. So walk us through your motivation for doing that, how the process went, and then what your thoughts were after, once you finished the piece.
Sure. Well, I had asked ChatGPT in like January if it could write a white paper. It said no. Other people had asked it. It said no. I saw a few blog articles where people were saying, well, or Twitter things where people were saying, well, clearly AI can't write white papers. And then every couple of weeks I would ask it. One week it said, yes, I can write a white paper of 3,500 words. I was like, wow, did it learn something or what? So I thought, well, okay, I'll give this a try. And because I've worked on over 300 white papers for, clients. So I wrote white papers for dummies. So I feel like I know the format inside and out. And I thought, let's see how ChatGPT really does here. And so I asked it. This was a test from the very start. I asked it, can you give me a list of reasons why people should not use ChatGPT to write a white paper? And, I thought it might say, oh, I'm not going to answer that. Oh, and it just goes zip, 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 zip. Here's 9 reasons. And they were all like pretty solid reasons. This is one area where ChatGPT and other AIs are fantastic at brainstorming, right? At coming up with ideas. Like in a minute, it had the outline for my numbered list. And I called it 9 reasons why ChatGPT can't write your next white paper. And then I went on this odyssey of prompting. I had never prompted it for something this long, and it couldn't write all those words in one go. It had to write them in little chunks of 400, 500, 600 words. So I got it to write an introduction, and then each of the 9 pieces and reasons, and then a conclusion. And then I wrote an afterword based on the experience. So it wrote 3,250 words, and I didn't edit it. I just kind of chopped out 100 words of very repetitive stuff. You know what I chopped out? It was like, I call it the consumer warning. At the end of every chunk, it would say, but of course, anything written by ChatGPT must be carefully fact-checked by a human, and there is still room for humans. There will always be room for human writers. Like, it just said the same, like 50, 75 words, almost every piece of output. So we've got speed, we've got ideas, speed. It just spit out this stuff really, really, really fast. As far as quality, I would say it's, I remember you were talking about this with one of your guests. What level copy would you say this is? I think its first drafts are C minus. C minus. It's not the worst I've ever seen submitted by a professional writer, but it's far from publishable. I've been an editor, I've been a newspaper editor, newsletter editor, a book editor, and what it comes out with for its first draft, and this is version 3.5 a couple months ago, it was not publishable, right? It would definitely need an editor, definitely need some work. So I started re-prompting it. I started saying, okay, take what you gave me and please make it more sparkling. Please make it more readable. Please put in some imagery. Please put in a figure of speech. And I found it was really, really weak at that. Really, really, really poor. It has this clunky wooden style, and I think I ended up doing 150 prompts, right? 150 prompts over
Wow,
2
for the
days.
whole piece.
Yeah, yeah, and so some of that maybe 1/3 of that is because I was learning how to prompt as well. But I did 10 drafts. I pushed it to rewrite each of those sections 10 times. And you can see it for yourself and judge the quality of the writing, but I'd say it's not B yet. I'd say maybe it's B minus,
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually asked it to rewrite it to hit a certain readability level. I usually shoot for 50, on the reading ease out of 100. And it said, sure, here it is. This is 50. When I retested its chunks that it said was 50 with, Microsoft Word or readability checker from the web, it said it was 36. So this gets into the reliability,
It's very confident, isn't it?
Oh
Oh,
my
sure, here
God.
you go. And
Yeah.
it doesn't show any sort of doubt. It just tells you what you want to hear with great confidence, and you believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really is true. You really do have to check everything. Um, and its readability analysis was not accurate. And the worst thing about it was the research. So I was just using ChatGPT and asking it for sources. And then I was pushing it for footnotes. And it came up with footnotes, beautifully formatted footnotes, uh, wonderful on point little quotes and sources. And I thought, I just about fell off my chair. I thought, this is amazing. Even though it's taking me all these prompts, like as if I get better at prompting, I'll just be able to sit there and talk, and the machine will write a white paper with sources, like with footnotes. And the research stage of a white paper, I'm finding is the hardest, longest stage these days, because there's so much stuff on the web, right? There's so much dreck on the web you have to sift through. Um, but let me tell you, it gave me 18 sources with footnotes. Then I said, oh, I'm going to check these. Uh, I 16 of them are completely bogus, and the other two I couldn't confirm, even though it's possible they were there, because they were one was talking about a survey from a company that had been bought by another company, so their website had changed. So maybe they took down the survey from a couple of years ago. Another one was similar like that, kind of murky. I couldn't find the original source, but I couldn't say it was bogus. The other 16 completely made up. So it made them up so skillfully. It made them up like it would take an author like Gary Marcus, who is a computer scientist who's written books and has a blog where he talks about the limitations of AI and these large language models in particular is what he's really down on. So it had a book by Gary Marcus, a fantastic quote by Gary Marcus, a page number where that quote came from. Okay, turned out the book did not exist. Gary Marcus exists, and it sounded like something he would say, but I couldn't find that anywhere where he had said that. And then when I would do the next draft, I would say, okay, let's drill down on that Gary Marcus thing, find out where it actually came from. It would come back with perhaps a different book name, perhaps the same book name with a different page number, but the same quote, perhaps a different quote, but the same page number and the same book, right? So it started to look pretty fishy. And then the funny thing, I don't know if you've seen this, Ed, but the funny thing I'll say, why are you just making this stuff up? And it will say, sorry for the confusion. Like,
Oh, haven't seen
no,
that.
this is not confusion. This is you just making crap up, and it would always say that. It's programmed to say that. Sorry for the confusion. Here is a more accurate footnote. And then it would be the same old crap. So I ended up, Bing, the new Bing had come out with ChatGPT built into it. So I ended up researching the sources with the new Bing, and that was very good and right on, and things that I could confirm and footnotes and page numbers. So the new Bing, has real-time access to the web and is good. And ChatGPT has that now through plugins, and that promises to take away that problem. But I would still never submit anything straight out of ChatGPT without checking it and without really rewriting it. I wouldn't hand a white paper like this to a client, with that style. One of the other things I noticed, Ed, was all of the 9 pieces started the same. Large language models may be great at doing this, but they're not so great at doing that. And then the point might be unreliable research. And then it would have a quote, and then it would have a bit more discussion, and then it would say, unlike human readers who can go on the web live and fact check all of their sources and even phone up people and get live quotes. But the thing is, all 9 points in the numbered list followed exactly that same structure. So
yeah, same cadence, same rhythm, same everything, right? It just
yep.
changing the words.
Yep.
But it
and
has well, I mean, it's a language model. I mean, it's designed to provide information in a certain way. That's part of it, right?
yeah, yeah. And when I would say to it, okay, mix up this section a bit, don't change the structure, don't move the lead, don't make this like all the others, change it around. No matter how I said it, it couldn't do it. And I found it, what's really frustrating, sometimes I would say, okay, you got a good quote, don't touch the quote, but change the structure. It would rewrite the quote, exactly what I asked it not to. So really, somewhat exhilarating, somewhat exasperating
So you're finding that now with the new Bing Chat, you're able to get much more accurate and reliable research then. And I'm assuming you fact checked all of it, and those did check out. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, and that's always been the idea. This is, the first public iteration, and we know it's only going to get better from here. So that leads me to then, with this experience in mind, everything you're absorbing and processing yourself, let's talk about the pros and the cons here, in terms of your predictions for the future. Let's start with the dangers, and then I'd like to discuss a little bit of the positive things that may come out of this. And again, in the context of writers, copywriters, marketers.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm drinking such healthy coffee. It has cashew milk and big chunks of cashews in it.
Yeah, mine is not chunky.
Well, Moore's law for microprocessors was the idea that roughly every was it year or 2
year and
years,
a half, 18
year
months,
and a half, the number of transistors on a chip would double. There's a similar thing at work in the world of AI, and it's pretty shocking. Sit down. Every year, the power of AI is going up 10x. And I think we can see that mid 2022, ChatGPT 3, it was a bit of a joke. I've heard people talk about it, and they're like, they couldn't get anything out of it. 1 year later, we're up to ChatGPT 4, the new Bing plugins, other models like Claude, thousands of new products. You can use this. You can start a business based on AI and run it, a writing business, all through AI, I think, these days. So that's pretty frightening to think, like, another year from now, ChatGPT 5, 6 is going to be 10 times as good. If it gets 10 times as good, it may never be A level copy, but it might be B+ level copy.
Well, I want to pause real quick, because I don't, what you said there is so important that we need to really underscore that, because the human mind is not designed to understand compounded growth. So we need to put it in perspective. So what you're saying is, in a year, if it's going to be 10x better, and it's 10x better because it uses the power that it has today to improve itself. So therefore, now it's exponentially better. And now that it's better, it's using its new improvements to create even more compounding improvement. Within 3 years, you don't have 30x. The compounded improvement is much higher than that, because it's building on itself, right? I think that's where that's what we all need to understand. And that's just 3 years. Let's take 10 years.
Yeah.
Where are we going to be in 10 years? So anyway, I just wanted to kind of insert that, because this is not linear growth we're talking about.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Ed. It's almost impossible to imagine. But in terms of the research that's going on, when you have billions of dollars pouring into a certain sector, and you have thousands of the smartest people in the world working on it, and there's a gold rush on, they're coming up with ways to train models on much smaller sets of data, to have it self-train much more intelligently. There's tons of open source. Facebook is being incredible. All of Facebook's AI is open source. Open source is one of the leading factors in the AI race right now. This is not just we're going to find more data to train it with and it's going to get smarter. This is like the entire world of technology is focused on making this better. And that's why every week you hear something like, well, there's just a new research paper out about how you can train a new model on like 1/10 the data, you know, and you have a good image for this. You know, I like the ladder and I like the flood. I think it's a flood. And what do you do when there's a flood? You know what I've heard? I've never seen a flash flood, but I've heard in a flash flood, it's like you see the water running down the street and it's like a 2 or 3 inches high. And you say, oh, that's nothing. I'm going to get wet feet. I'll just keep walking along. What you're supposed to do, that's the warning. You're supposed to run in the opposite direction as fast as you can run and drop your groceries and run, because when it's 1 minute, it's 3 inches high. Another couple of minutes, it's going to be 2 feet high and it's going to be sweeping you off your feet. And after that, it's going to be over your head. And I think that's what unfortunately, I believe that that's where we're headed. All the signs show me that that's where we're headed, a flood. So what do you do during a flood? You run to higher ground. You've said that. All of the low-lying commodity providers are going to be flooded. All of the content mills, all of the people. I saw a fellow over in Eastern Europe. I just was looking on Fiverr, and he was like, I will write your white paper in less than 24 hours for $19.95 US.
$19.95.
Yeah. What kind of white paper are you going to get for that? You know, and that was before AI. That was before AI. So he could do it now with AI. What kind of work are you going to get? All those people, I think, are going to be flooded because AI is already even cheaper than them. AI is $20 a month for as much as you can crank out. So who would even pay somebody $5, $10, $20 for one piece? ChatGPT is already better than those commodity writers. So I think they're flooded. They're the first level that's going to be flooded. And I think that you've talked about that on your
they can't leave their house, so it's not that they don't want to leave, is they can't leave their house. So right, the flood's going to take them immediately.
What's another level? Well, how about agencies, content agencies, right? They're not mills, they're agencies. A lot of these agencies were former advertising agencies, and the bottom fell out of the advertising business, as we know, when the web came on. Everything went digital, online. There was a whole new agencies that came along and doing digital advertising and SEO and all that, optimizing all that kind of stuff, content marketing. Most agencies, though, their business model is charging by the hour. You cannot charge by the hour anymore. That's over. Because if you say, well, we'll write you this blog post for $50 an hour. That sounds pretty modest, right? Oh, and it's going to take us 5 hours. That's $250. And we're going to do 4 of them for you a month. That's $1,000 a month for keep your blog going at a minimal level. And somebody's looking at ChatGPT and they say, well, your stuff is good, but it's not 500 times as good as ChatGPT. It's not 1,000 times as good as ChatGPT. I know what you're doing, Mr. Agency guy, is you're going to use ChatGPT to get you ideas and to maybe do a draft and maybe revise your draft and maybe optimize it for SEO. You're going to be using this stuff in the background and charging me how much it would have cost you in the old days when the clock was ticking. You're not getting away with that anymore. I'll pay you $50 a blog post. This is my prediction, that the fees for individual pieces are going to go, hourly billing is going to go away. All those agencies that can't adapt are going to go away, and they're going to have to go to value-based pricing. And the value is going to be lower because the effort to produce that value is much reduced by AI. So you think I'm onto something there, or do you think
I
I'm being
think you
too
are,
naive, or?
especially so if we're going to stay with that metaphor, now we're at higher ground. We're no longer in the valley. We're at the base of the mountain. But I think agencies are different tiers, right? We're talking agencies that are cranking out very basic business to consumer content.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and those are definitely not going to be safe. What about agencies, content studios in the B2B market that are really putting out and writing content leadership or thought leadership, higher end, more sophisticated, nuanced content? I have to believe that they're, certainly higher up the mountain in terms of safety.
I think that's where everybody has got to go, but there's not enough room for everybody on that mountain top. And you know what I think they got to do is build a giant frickin' tower on top of the mountaintop and climb up that tower as high as they can climb too. It's a market, right? So the low end of the market is gone. The mid range of the market, fees will fall, and the top end of the market, the best clients with the biggest budgets who are using AI wisely, and probably have laid off some of their marketing staff, really, but we'll still need outside providers. They will be the creme de la creme, and every single person, it'll be like one of those zombie movies. Remember the World War Z and the
Oh,
wall in
yeah.
Jerusalem, and the zombies crawling up over the wall. I don't want to see this. I don't want this to happen, but it could be that there's hundreds of suppliers trying to get one spot on that tower on the top of the mountain. And the problem is, this is not a biblical flood. This is not a flash flood. This is not something where it rains for 40 days and 40 nights and a few people get in the ark. Well, maybe it is like that. Maybe it is like that. But I don't think the rain is going to stop. This is not something that just suddenly, the rain will stop and the ark will land and everybody will get out and it'll be fine. What would stop AI from continuing to roll on? You know,
Well,
like,
maybe now we're living in water world.
yeah. And some people have these
we
cool
have to
boats that, yeah.
we have to continue this metaphor. So I
Okay.
mean,
So it's water world,
it's water
and
world,
and
and
the
now we're living on boats. But
which is
most
that
people.
I'm glad you said that. That's great. That gives me some hope, Ed. That gives me some hope. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's work with this a little bit, right? I think some people are going to be just they're not going to survive, right? So those people are moving up the mountain.
Yeah.
Others are going to give up on the way there. And we're talking the majority of people either not going to survive or give up on the way there. And I'm saying the majority, I don't want to scare anybody, but we have to all remember that the majority of writers out there aren't competing directly with listeners of this podcast.
Right.
Okay. So I
Right.
want to
Right.
provide a little bit of perspective
Right.
here. I don't want
Right.
people to freak out completely. So this wasn't really a direct issue for you anyway. But if you're already kind of halfway up the mountain and you're seeing this, people running up the hill, what would keep you employed? What would keep you viable? What things can you work on when your craft is no longer the differentiator? And I've always argued, don't rely on your writing chops alone, because everyone's saying the same thing. But when that's no longer the thing, because you have a computer that can crank out something similar, maybe not now, but within 1 to 3 years, what other competitive differentiators do you have that were still going to be viable?
Ed, I'm really glad you steered us in this direction, because I was getting kind of down there, and I'm a happy-go-lucky, positive-minded person. I hate thinking about, I hate worrying about the future. So here's how I dealt with this personally. I'm in my 60s. I could retire. I'm not a millionaire, but I could retire and be fine if I never made another penny from my writing. So when I heard about all this AI stuff, I really thought to myself, well, this is probably going to really change our industry. Should I bother learning about all this stuff and dealing with all this? I've been a writer. I've written for publication for 50 years. 51 years, actually. When I was 17, I was the editor of my college newspaper, and writing newspaper stories. So I've developed my craft over 50 plus years. Is that all just going to go away and not be meaningless because software has come along and done this? Do I even want to deal with this, or do I just want to hang it up and quit? And I thought about that for a while. And then I said, I want to see what this new stuff is all about. And I want to see if I can understand it. I come out of technology. If anybody can understand this, I come out of the software business. Maybe I can understand it and help translate it for my peers, my colleagues, my writing buddies and friends. And maybe I can do something to help the writing community, deal with this. And for me personally, I've never told anybody this, and I guess it's a dumb thing to announce on your podcast, but here's what I'm going to do. I am an expert in one particular format, white papers. A lot of marketing people are wondering, can I just use AI and just press a couple of buttons and give a couple of prompts and get a decent white paper out? White papers are still popular. They're not going away. The latest figures I saw showed that marketers love white papers more than any other type of format. And what I'm going to do is launch a new service. You know how there's the idea of do it yourself and done for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's some space in the middle there, done with you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm going to launch a done with you service for marketing people that want to use AI to write white papers. And I'm going to bring my deep knowledge of that format to the table to help them learn how to prompt and learn how to polish. And if they need to, hire me to polish their white paper so that in a very short time, for less than they would have paid in the old days, they'll get a respectable white paper out. So I'm going to offer a strategic combination human writing skill plus AI service. And that'll be starting summer or fall, So I think that's what people have to do, is operate on a really strategic level. And here's something that we were going to talk about that I think is important. Talk about AI with your clients. Don't let it be the elephant in the room. I have decided I deliberately talk about AI with my clients, and those have been fascinating conversations. When I land a white paper, I'm working on a white paper right now, and I said to my client, well, I've been toying around with AI, and I'd like to use it to help me be more productive on this project. Nice way to position. Who's going to say, no, I don't want you to be productive on my project, right? My client says, oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. My manager is coming by every single day. He's walking around the entire company saying, are you using AI? Why don't you use AI for that? Hey, how are you using AI today? Hey, did you discover anything about AI? Our manager is walking around urging us all to use AI all the time. And I'm doing it. And how do you like it? Well, what do you find it works well at? Oh, you know what? I had to do this thing. I had to go on the Zoom and I didn't know the person. And I just asked the AI to tell me about the person and tell me about their area. And I got like this incredible briefing in 1 minute that would have taken me 15 minutes to get from Wikipedia or LinkedIn, And so I've had these exciting conversations with my clients because nobody has this figured out. Everybody is confused. And a lot of writers are afraid of bringing it up. Oh my goodness, I can't talk about AI with my client's going to think I'm just going to press a button and then hand in what I've got. So I've got a policy, a deliberate policy that I came up with, which is, I at the very start, I talk honestly with my prospects about AI. I'll probably use AI for brainstorming. I might use AI if you give me a 75-page report. I might get it to sum it up for me, or ask it, are there any great sound bites in here? I might even get it to draft a section but I will never, I promise to you, I will never just give you what AI gives me. I will always rewrite it and revise it and polish it and humanize it and make it my best possible work. So I'm going to use AI to speed up my production on your project, but I'm not going to just hand you something out of AI. What client would mind hearing that?
I love that. Well, like the only thing, playing devil's advocate here, Gordon, maybe not the right kind of client, not the client that you would want, but is there a possibility that a client might say, we're fine with that, but you need to lower your fee because we know it's going to take you less time?
You know what? Fine. They're right. They're right. If a normal white paper takes me 2 weeks and using AI brings it down to 1 week, why should all that benefit flow to me? And why should I be in that precarious situation with a client who can say, you know what, that damn guy, charges the same fee, and then he told us he was going to use AI. Clients aren't stupid. I'm prepared for fees to fall. Fees, I think, for writing are going to fall. How could they not? If we gain this a fantastic production tool that can make us 50% more productive, how can we justify keeping the same fees? I mean, we could drop our fees by 25% without blinking, and we're still ahead of the game. We can drop them 35%, and we're still ahead of the game if we're gaining 50%. On that white paper I did, that first one, and I'm in the middle of some other experiments too, it saved me about 1/3 of the time to do that.
Even though you were learning as you went in terms of
Even
prompting.
with all those screw ups, even researching, I figured that white paper would have taken me 2 weeks to research and do the old way. And it took me 3 days, you know.
Interesting.
And so maybe that's more than a third, but I mean, that was spaced out over, over time and everything. So,
well, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but
Mhm.
to be fair, we were talking about, number one, a number list white paper, which would be one of the, you've said this, it's one of the easiest, or maybe the easiest to write. Number two, it was a kind of a mainstream topic. It wasn't an esoteric topic that, ChatGPT would be lost in.
No interviews.
No interviews. So I'm wondering how much productivity gains you would get, in a much more nuanced esoteric topic, at least today.
Yeah, I think 25 to 35%.
Interesting.
I can see it at the initial stage. Really, really powerful to come up with a framework or some ideas or a titles, right? Good titles. And it, the thing is, it's like working with it is like, it's like working with a really keen intern or a writing buddy who never gets frustrated, is always happy, is always confident. You shred its work and say, like, go back to the drawing board and redo this. Sure, I'd be happy to redo that just the way you want. It's happy in its work, and so you can go in day or night and ask it to do anything, and we're just scratching the surface. I'm just scratching the surface of what it's capable of doing and what it will be in the next few weeks. So I'm expecting fees to go down, value to go up, and everybody to be happy. Like time to deliver to go down too. So with an excellent client and an excellent writer and wise use of AI, those people will still be in business, I think.
Yeah. Well, so here's along those lines, I have another question for you. I think it's helpful to think of other situations where something like this has happened, meaning a serious disruption. Because we need to put it in context. Otherwise, it feels like the sky is falling and we're all doomed. Okay. Which, I think we need to be cautious, but there's still some positives. This, in a way, and specifically when I say this, I'm talking about prompt engineering. Because if you're talking about a done-for-you service, you're talking about you being the conduit between the technology and the client. You're there to
Mhm.
train them, but also to show them how to coax the right information from the tool. Okay. We're at a stage right now. This reminds me a lot of 1993 with the early days of the internet before browsers. I remember driving to
Uh,
Barnes and Noble to
yeah,
buy a dummies book about HTML code because at the
yeah.
time, that was the only way you could really get on the internet, and I want to say it was 93, but may have been 94. Still, the point is, there was a moment in time when some geeks went out there and figured out how to use the internet, right? And they were the ones that people went to. Oh, that's so cool. Hey, could you look this up for me?
Hmm. Yeah.
And they were the conduit. Um, 94 or so, suddenly we had browsers, we had the World Wide Web, and now everybody could use this. Now, it was still early days. Like, well, where do you go? There was no Google at the time. There were some search engines, but it was this whole world of possibilities. You could waste a lot of time. And that's what we were all doing. We're wasting time. So back to where we are today, it seems that we have a window right now that's ideal for what you just described. We have clients who don't have the time, the energy, or the knowledge to know how to use these tools appropriately. And then we, if we're smart, we're going to learn how to do that, not only so we could use it for our own good when working on client projects, but to offer a done for you service and be that conduit and teach them to fish. Um, do you see that window evaporating or closing? And what I mean is, will there come a time very soon where you won't really need great prompt engineers because the technology will be so good that just like with the World Wide Web, anyone can Google, anyone can find a website, anyone can find the research. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad. I'm loving this conversation, Ed, because you're giving me all kinds of hope and new ideas and stuff. And I think that's a very apt metaphor for the early days of the web. I was not interested. People would be showing me, like I was working in a software company and writing manuals, and the geek would be calling me over. Look at this thing, and it would be this horrible mess on the screen, right? And like, you can find all these books, and I'd like, I'll just go to my bookshelf, or I'll go to a bookstore, or I'll go to a library. I'm not looking at that. And then you see the book and it's unreadable on the screen, right? It was
Yeah.
kind of a joke. And this is uh, I guess to update that to today, the my problem with the writing market, and I'll start at the most basic level. Everybody thinks they can write. Everybody can type on their computer. And now everybody can type a prompt into ChatGPT and get something out that's okay. It's a basic write-up about anything that they can get. So who are the best prompters? Who are the best people to use AI to accomplish anything? Those are going to be the people that are a cut above in their background knowledge of some field, right? So I could go and try and get ChatGPT to write me some software code. I couldn't tell which end of it is up. I couldn't tell if it was any good or not. A really good programmer can get it to write code and tell, oh, that's pretty good, but find the little flaws in it and make it better. Same with a writer. A writer that knows what makes really good content will be able to prompt and evaluate what's coming out of the AI and say, like, it's okay, but it could be better. Can you make it like this? Can you do that? Can you bring in this? Can you push it to make it do better? And I think that's the value of going to be a seasoned practitioner in any field, is they will get the most out of these tools. And that's not going to change over time. I mean, like, so say you have 1 million case studies fed into an AI and it'll write you a case study. Well, who is going to evaluate whether that case study makes any sense or not when it comes out? Somebody who knows case studies. So it will be the marketing person who works as an editor or it will be a writer who takes that and can say, well, it would be good, but we really need this, we really need that, and we could make a pun on the name of the company, and add that last 20% that makes all the difference.
All the
And
difference.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. That turns something from being flat and pedestrian to being something, crisp and clear and sparkling. So that's craft, but it's an element of craft. It's background knowledge of your format that you're writing.
Or
And it's
background knowledge of the market and the audience that you're writing
yes,
to.
yes, yes,
Right. If
yes,
you spent 12 years in the construction industry and yeah, I don't know, wherever, and now you're helping a construction software company write this white paper, there are nuances in that paper that you can have that will make all the difference,
yep,
because the reader, the one of the thing, it's a sniff test, right? They can smell it a mile away. This was written by someone who doesn't know what they're facing day to day.
yep,
But if you add little
yep.
bits and pieces that shows them, I get you. I know exactly what you're thinking right now, what you're dealing with, and what's keeping you up at night. You have
That
to
is
live
so,
that.
that is so right on. That is so right on. And I wonder if the AI systems will ever have that. They may actually never have that. So, am I worried about the future of things like case studies and white papers? No. Case studies, I think, are really, really as AI proof as you can get. Because look what you have to do for a case study. You have to have a person to person interview.
Mhm.
Sometimes clients want to just send the questions into their customer and have them send back emails. Those are never as good as when you get in a conversation, just
Agreed.
like we're having now, because you discover new things, you get great sound bites, you get really much better detail. So a person-to-person interview that AI can't do. Then you have to tell a story, an interesting story with a challenge that's overcome, a before and after, a hero's journey. Can AI do that? I don't know. I wouldn't trust it these days. That's for sure to
It's
do.
not going to sing for sure. It's going to be
Yeah.
very mechanic.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I think those are okay. So a few things. This gives me hope too. I think it's the knowing there's an art to prompting. I hate that it's called prompt engineering, because that implies left brain
yeah,
activity when it's really a right brain activity, right? I think we
yeah,
writers, and I know you've written about this, we are much better positioned to become better prompt engineers than your typical engineer, so to speak, or somebody like at your client's office who just doesn't have the time. That's the other thing to keep in mind. Will clients really invest the time and the energy necessary to use these tools, to the way that, to a point where they don't need us? I doubt that very
yeah,
much.
yeah,
I think you're going to see it again in the low-lying areas, but as you go up the mountain, I think that's going to be harder to find. I mean, you're already dealing with marketing directors who are going from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't even have time to process. Their amygdala is like on full alert. Their
yeah,
creative power is gone. So they need us, number one. Number two, I love that idea of the last 20%. That's really where it matters. And I'll even throw this out there. In a world where more and more content will be AI generated, it's really the human content that's going to truly stand out. So in a way, that's another way we could look at it, right? It's okay, bring it on. Bring it on, because
hmm,
my stuff is going to stand out so
hmm,
much more.
hmm, hmm, yep, yep. And in terms of white papers, they've been around for well over 100 years, and I can't see any end to them, because what does a good white paper do? It helps a business person to understand an issue that they want to understand, to solve some kind of problem, nagging problem in their business, or to make a decision about which way to go with something. As long as there are businesses, as long as there's business people, they're going to want to do those things. And they're going to need information from outside the company to be able to do that. So that's what I call a white paper, some kind of amalgamation of information, carefully assembled information that makes a persuasive point about some issue or some problem or some decision. And whether they will be on paper, like printed as PDFs and read on the screen, or whether they will be some kind of microsite, or whether they'll be delivered in some format that hasn't been invented yet. Like, I think that business people will need that kind of information. They're not going to get it from TikTok. They're not going to get it from Pinterest.
Yeah.
When a company has a big decision to make, they want facts and numbers and cost benefits and solid analysis, and they argue about it. They discuss about it. This is what I was really fortunate to work in B2B, and to work in companies where we had to make these kind of decisions. I remember when desktop publishing came out, I had to spec out a system, a desktop publishing system. For a newspaper, I had to spec out a typesetting system. And you better believe, when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, you don't just watch a couple of videos, or read something that AI gave you and make a decision. You go to meetings and you get grilled, and people say, what about this? What about that? You've got a bean counter in the room, and often you've got the HR person who is saying, well, what about my people? What about the training? How hard is this thing going to be to use? And you've got the COO who's saying, well, how are we going to roll this thing into our process? What are we going to have to throw out? How long is this going to take? You got the CEO who's the one where the buck stops at his desk, and he doesn't want to make a blunder that looks terrible on him. So I think that's part of the going up the mountain thing. The better clients are going to be the ones that are selling the most expensive things, because for their clients to buy those expensive things, they need to provide a lot of information that has to be assembled by writers. So don't look. I used to say a white paper, if you're selling something less than 50,000, you probably can't justify a white paper. Now I'm thinking maybe it's like going to be, if you're selling something for less than $500,000, you can't justify hiring a writer to do a white paper. There's still a lot of companies out there selling expensive systems. Maybe it'll be, if you're selling something less than 2 million, you can't justify hiring a writer. So look for the companies that are selling really expensive things. And that's another way to find future clients during this flood thing, and stay on the top of the mountain.
Well, I want to add to that, because somebody might say, well, yeah, but you just talked about 10x improvement over the next year. Won't it get to a point where a company can write a pretty good white paper with AI? My argument would be this, at least I haven't seen this yet, I don't even see the promise of this happening anytime soon, is the ability to really connect dots. So it seems to be very good at linear thinking, logic, but we all know that a white paper is not just pure logic. There's a hidden emotional, human, conscious element there that very, very, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it with the stuff that's come out of ChatGPT.
No,
that you're really missing. And we've talked about some of this already, but I really want to emphasize that. I'm not sure if we'll get there, or if we'll get there anytime soon, at least with this technology. You're still going to need the human to connect the dots, to tell the story, to provide that element, the nuances that are really going to take this piece to a level that's going to connect with that audience.
I think you're right. And ChatGPT admitted that much in the white paper that it wrote.
Oh, there you go.
one of the 9 reasons not to use it to write a white paper was because it has trouble identifying with an audience. And a related issue was it has trouble showing cultural sensitivity, or
great point.
Understanding diverse groups of people. Like I say, a customer base that's maybe somewhere outside of where it was trained in Southern California. Like, I mean, the thing about all this AI stuff is it's being done by the tech bros in in California, and they get over to another part of the world, and sometimes it can't cope with what it's encountering or being asked, you know.
And when cultural sensitivity is becoming more and more and more important, I mean,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is not going to be able to catch up to that.
yeah. And you don't just take this whole swath and make it out of bounds. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about what's his name, Emo. We don't talk about the guy in the song from the Disney movie. We don't talk about
oh, we don't talk about not Nemo. Yeah, it's yeah.
but there's
From
another point for what that applies to both case studies and white papers, and probably other formats of B2B, is these AIs are trained on public information, right? Or you have an in-company one that you've trained on your in-company voice. Maybe that's going to come, and that's fine. But say you're working on some breakthrough product, you know, where you've done a company's done independent research, they've done independent development, they've taken some science and like really pushed it to the limit, and there's nothing out there. Not even one research paper out there, because they're doing this in stealth mode. What is the AI going to know about that? It's going to know squat. Is it going to be able to interview these egghead scientists? Absolutely not. You know, is it going to be able to get them to sit there and type? No, you're going to need a person to interview those really brainy people and translate what they're saying into normal language that a customer could understand. So that applies to a lot of content for new products, right? So look for expensive new breakthrough products, you know, is I think where AI is not going to be able to deliver.
Well, and one we haven't really talked about directly has been elevating your value to the advisory level. I mean, we talked about it indirectly with your done with you idea, but I really believe this is where more and more writers need to move. It's hey, forget about just the craft of writing. You need to be able to provide advice, insights, perspectives, new ideas, help clients connect the dots, because again, they're too busy, but you're focused, you know, a little bit more, and you're looking at it from a different angle. I see so many writers doing, when they do it, they're doing it for free. And I think we need to start looking at that as a revenue center, as a way to really move up the value ladder, the value mountain, if we're going to stay with that. And AI can't duplicate that.
Right on it. And that goes right back to the name of my business, that white paper guy. You know, I have a very common name, Gordon Graham, and in any city there's a dozen Gordon Grahams. When I went to set up my website many years ago, gordongraham.com was already taken. So I was like, what am I going to have for a name? What am I going to have? And I remembered in my B2B companies where I was working, we would always say, oh, we gotta get our trade show booth redone this year. Call up that trade show guy. You don't remember a person's name so much as what they do or their specialty or their niche, but there's only one trade show guy, and everybody in the company knows who you're talking about, and somebody has his phone number somewhere, right? So I just said that white paper guy as like the guy that knows about white papers. And you know, there's not that many formats that everybody can be a guy, but like for a certain format, but maybe you can be that writer guy in your industry, in your niche, you know, and there's lots of room for naming yourself and going to market that way. And that is kind of fun and memorable. And, you know, I want to go back to this craft thing, because I do see people saying another big transition that I think of is it was before our time, but it was the rise of typesetting, and there was the typesetters unions for newspapers, and they were really skilled craftspeople. I mean, they knew all the dingbats and the names of them and how to space things out by hand by putting letters into those little wooden boxes, right? Typesetting machines came out where you would have a keyboard and you would press a key and the little piece of metal would just fall down right where you wanted it to fall. You didn't need those guys to have their hands in the boxes of type. Some few number of the typesetters learned how to use the new systems, but most of them resisted, and the unions resisted, and they became irrelevant. And they were all talking about, but it takes hand quality to really set this type, and we know all, you know, just what I said, we know all the names of the dingbats, and we know how to space things out, and we've been doing this for 100 years. So what? So what? They became irrelevant because that skill had been built into a machine, and now there's software that you can use to do all those kind of adjustments, and there's every dingbat in the world, and there's every font in the world, and all of us in offices can do that thanks to desktop publishing. So when I see writers saying, even as lovable as Anne Handley, I mean, I love Anne Handley, I've got all her books, I follow her, but even she sometimes gets on her soapbox and says, you know, it's quality, it's the quality of writing. That argument doesn't work when with a bean counter. It doesn't work with somebody whose budget is being challenged, and their manager is saying, well, why don't you just use AI? I've talked to people who say, my manager told me to just get AI to write all our case studies from now on, and I'm trying to push back. But guess where that manager is hearing that? From their manager, up and down the corporate ladder, because people are hearing all this noise, and a lot of company executives, as you say, don't have much time to really grasp stuff. So all they hear is AI can do it all now. You know, AI can do that for you. And there are going to be layoffs. Absolutely, there are going to be layoffs. There's going to be millions of people whose you know, professional jobs go poof. And companies will maximize what they can get AI to do and minimize their headcounts and their payrolls. That's business. I mean,
well, and especially as we're heading into a difficult economy. I mean, we could be facing a recession right now, or, you know, later this year. So that's only putting more pressure on us.
So yeah. Well, in a way, though, freelancers can be lucky, right? They can ride that
True.
out.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the profession as a whole, right? In terms of cost cutting.
Yeah.
This is not the best time for this to have come out.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of things here, you know, and I guess to sum it up, what I think is AI is fast and it's cheap. It's not that good today, but it's going to get better and better very quickly. There's a flood happening. You got to get to higher land, and you got to get to that top of the mountain. We've talked about a few ways to do that. That 20%, that was a very useful idea, I think, and that maybe it's that you add that 20%, you do a strategic service, and you charge for that service, and you become the go-to guy or gal for your industry, your niche, your type of document. You become the indisputed leader, maybe in a small handful of leaders, but you become the person they think of and the last person they would ever lay off. And, you know, I do have something hopeful that we could touch on. You know, like what I say to my clients is, you know, I'm never going to hand in something straight out of AI. I'm always going to revise it and make it sparkle. And I've got a list of 12 things that writers can do that AI still can't and may never be able to do. And we have talked about some of these. I don't know if we have time to run through them, Ed, or
yeah. Why don't we? I think that's a good way to close, because it's on a positive note, and I think we'll get everyone thinking a little differently.
Okay, and we're going to make this available as a downloadable checklist with a link in your show notes, right? So
yes, absolutely. So you should, if you go to the show notes page now, you should see a link to it.
Yeah. So these are things that I've learned over the past few months and in talking to many other writers. I mean, I talk to people all the time about this stuff and listen to podcasts. So 12 things writers can do that AI can't. And I'm calling this humanizing your content. First person, your writer's eye to create an intimate tone. AI might be able to write as I, but it is not going to sound like a real person. Number two, sensory details. Whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction content, try to create scenes, have colors, smells, sounds, textures, kind of immerse your reader in a concrete scene. That's a really powerful traditional writing technique, not used very much in B2B, but it could be, and it should be. Personal anecdotes. Share your lived experience to show your own personal history, the insights you've learned, make yourself a bit vulnerable. And this is what you can do with your intended reader too. You can allude to their lived experience, their issues and problems, right? When working in the company. Humor. AI just not get jokes or puns. I've spent probably more time trying to get ChatGPT to write me a decent joke than anything else, and it's terrible. Jokes, puns, witticisms, double entendres. It just
That's an art form. Yeah, that takes, you end up with a bad dad joke.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying with about the case studies. I always like to make a pun on the name of the company, and that AI is never going to do that. And parables. Sum up a point with a very apt parable that people have heard before, that resonates down through the ages. It could be something from the Bible. It could be something from another piece of wisdom literature. It could be something from a children's story or a fairy tale. Very powerful. AI will never do that. Never do. You can ask it. I've asked it. Come up with a parable. Doesn't know what I'm talking about. Questions. This is a powerful one that I always use. When you get to a point, imagine what your reader is wondering about. Anticipate their questions. Who, what, why, where, when, how. They're going to be asking, well, how did that happen anyway? So then you tell them how it happened right there. You don't wait for another page. You answer the questions that are arising in a person's mind, a reader's mind. Pop culture. Add a line from a recent pop song. Mention some kind of character or situation from a recent movie. That adds relatability. AI has not seen all the latest movies. It does not know all the comic book characters. It does not know the pop stars. And if it knows them, it doesn't know why anyone cares about them. It may have heard of Taylor Swift. Can it quote any Taylor Swift? Can it come up with a perfect Taylor Swift song title that you could drop in right there in your piece? I highly doubt it.
No, it needs to know context. It won't have that.
Yeah, that's one of the things in the 9 reasons, is context, cultural context. It doesn't have a clue. Wordplay. Now, you may not be able to use this all the time in B2B, but poetic wordplay can really transport readers. So there's assonance is vowels. Sibilance is that sound of like S. Onomatopoeia is the sound of like the crack of a whip. Use some of that to add some crackle to your sentences once in a while. And metaphors. Metaphors. B2B needs a lot more metaphors. Compare vastly different things to show connections that would never occur to an AI. And if you come up with a powerful metaphor, that's the same as a big idea. Come up with a big idea, a really powerful metaphor that will tie your whole piece together. That is powerful. And AI, I've asked it.
It's a right brain function. This is not a right. This tool technology does not have a right brain.
Yep. And rhetoric, learn and mine some of the timeless rhetorical devices, for very memorable phrasing. So think of Shakespeare, Macbeth, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. No AI would ever write that in a million years, unless you ask it, write me a sonnet in the style of Macbeth. But you're writing B2B, you're prompting B2B content. It will never write that. But I just have so much fun just reading about rhetoric. They don't teach it in schools anymore, and it used to be one of the cornerstones of a liberal education for thousands of years.
Not even in many liberal arts colleges. Amazing to me. Yeah.
And yet, what is more about using words than rhetoric? Rhetoric is about how to use words to influence your audience. Well, what is content marketing? What is copywriting, if not that? Literature, sort of on the same lines. AI has scanned many, many, many books, but it doesn't know how to draw on them. So use some kind of epigram that a well-known author said. Call up some kind of fable, a god or a goddess, a myth, a timeless story from antiquity, and that will add some kind of depth or resonance to your piece that AI would never do that. Even if you ask it, the current state is it doesn't know what you're talking about. And it will confidently give you some pap that it doesn't answer your question, right? And here's the final one. Now, these may be hard to work in, but I think that this is the supremo one here, number 12. Compassion, curiosity, empathy, forgiveness. These are supremely human virtues, that will make any story richer and less predictable. You want your content, you want your writing not to be predictable. So if you're talking about some terrible problem and suddenly your reader has an insight about how it's not as bad as they thought it was, or they could look at it a different way, or they could just be a little curious and find out about this one thing, or they could forgive the person that caused the problem, use supremely human emotions and try to work those in. See, this is new. Like, I've never said that before, that B2B writers should do that. This is fiction writing, right? But we should use some of the techniques of fiction writing to make our content writing more human and more resonant. And that's
in an age where we're going to be flooded with more and more of this AI powered content, this is where we need to go to stand out. So I would argue that if you haven't used some of these techniques, now is the time to start. And I'll say this, Gordon, what you just shared with us reminds me so much of the pivotal scene in the movie Good Will Hunting. It's so powerful when Matt Damon, Robin Williams are seated at the park and he can't get through to this kid. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly the scene I'm talking about. If not, this is a wonderful movie. Everyone should watch this. So Robin Williams is a therapist. Matt Damon is this kid who's absolutely brilliant. He's a genius and he's read every book. He knows all the facts. He knows all this information, right? But this is left brain. This is just facts and figures and trivia. And Robin Williams can't get to him, just can't get through to him. And he tells him at the park, he says, I spent all night last night thinking about all the hurtful things you said to me and why I can't get through to you. And I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of, and it finally hit me. You may know all these things. You may be able to quote this, that. You may be able to do these complex math problems. But here's what you don't know. You haven't lived these things. You haven't lived these situations. You haven't been through this pain. You haven't experienced this joy, and I feel sorry for you because that's what you're missing. That's the humanity of it all. And it's to me, where we are right now, that is the scene. That movie scene, I feel, describes where we are right now. And that gives me reassurance that, hey, there is hope. We are dealing with this. We got a big Matt Damon out there right now who's threatening everybody, or it feels that way. But we need to remember that at the end of the day, Matt Damon hasn't lived these things, hasn't had these experiences. And that's where we come in. And that's where we could really add humanity and truth to the work.
Right on, Ed. Right on. That is a beautiful and true, and probably a great way for us to close out today.
Yes, this has been fascinating, Gordon. And I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally had the conversation. I suspect I'm gonna be coming back to you and see if we can do a recap or revisit this later on this year if you're game for that.
Well, the water line will be higher at that point, but I think the advice we came up with is really true, and will be kind of evergreen advice, right?
Yes. So thank you again for spending some of your day with us. I appreciate you as always. And guys, we'll have the links here in the show notes. So check out Gordon's stuff. And where can folks learn more about you and your work? Subscribe to your newsletter, which is wonderful.
Oh, great. Well, it's that whitepaperguy.com. And if you search on that whitepaperguy.com, if you search for can ChatGPT write a white paper, or if you just search for ChatGPT, it'll come up where you can download that white paper that I did. And then our 12 things writers can do to humanize their content. That'll be a download on the podcast show notes. So, thank you, Ed. You have made me feel a lot better about this. It's we may be facing a flood, but I think we've got some really practical things to do, and I'm doing them.
There you go. That's all we can do. Day
Yeah.
to day.
Yeah.
day. Gordon, thanks again. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, Ed, that was great. We always come up with, you can cut this part off, but I feel like we feel our way through, and we come up with some great ideas together. It's not like I start off with like all this knowledge to impart. I feel like we have a really true conversation. So that was great.
We do. We're just in here having coffee.